I've been looking after my younger brother, Justin, 33M, since he was 10. Our parents passed away when I was only 16, so I had to step up and take care of the household while he was still little. I did everything for him, and he meant the world to me. Maybe I spoiled him a bit too much. Because of my responsibilities, I didn't date much until I met Melissa, 35F, about 10 years ago. We dated for 2 years, and it was great. My brother really liked her too. One day, I overheard a conversation Melissa was having with her friend. She was talking about me, saying she loves how I take care of her in every way, but she found me average in bed. Her friend asked her if she is going to talk to me about it, or how is she happy. She told her that her fixture is my brother. Then, she spilled the tea. She had been having an affair with Justin for the past 8 months. She justified it by saying she thinks Justin is better in bed than I am. It was incredibly painful to hear. I tried to act like I hadn't heard anything and went inside the house. So I confronted Justin about the whole thing. I know how to get him to talk. After he kept denying it, I pushed him hard on the matter. Finally, he couldn't hold it in anymore and admitted it was true. He stayed quiet to avoid hurting me. He's in love with Melissa and wants to marry her, but she won't leave me alone. I was beyond furious. I wanted to punch him in the face, but instead, I just told him he's dead to me and walked away. I threw Melissa out too, and she ended up crashing with my brother and his roommates. My brother kept banging on my door non-stop. It got so bad that I had to move in with a friend, and I made sure nobody told my brothers where I was. His calls and emails were all the same, that he was sorry, and he never wanted to hurt me and he will break up. I stopped the bank account I had set up for him, like a trust fund he could access when he turned 25. At that point, he wasn't my brother anymore. I fell into a deep depression. My eating and sleeping habits went all haywire. Every night I'd have nightmares of my brother and ex laughing at me, saying I was terrible in bed. They made it seem like if I had been better, she wouldn't have left me. Things got so bad that at one point, I found myself standing in front of a train track, feeling like I couldn't handle it anymore. Luckily, my few friends came to my rescue. They were my lifeline during that tough time, and I stayed with them for a whole year. I decided to seek help and went to therapy, attending group sessions too. Closeness became a big anxiety trigger for me, so I avoided dating for a long while. But my friend encouraged me to give it a shot, and I did try once with a one-night stand, but it didn't work out well for either of us. Even now I continue with therapy, but I'm happy to say that other areas of my life have improved. I started focusing on building new relationships with different people. I took the opportunity to travel and explore new hobbies. Most importantly, I learned to live for myself and put my well-being first. I've been with someone for 3 years now, and we're engaged and expecting a child together. Wendy, 32F, is a really sweet person. She knows all about my insecurities and the issues my brother caused me. She's been really mature and patient with me, and because of her, I've been able to trust someone enough to be in a relationship. A couple of days ago I received a wedding invitation in the mail, and guess who it's from? Yup, my brother. He's been keeping an eye on me from a distance and invited me to his wedding with none other than Melissa. Seeing their names together doesn't hurt as much now, but I feel kind of numb about the whole thing. If this had happened 8 years ago, I would have had a complete breakdown. I still feel this pain inside that I can't be happy for my brother on his big day. My fiancé suggests that we shouldn't go to the wedding and just delete the invitation. You know what? I just want to see them suffer. I don't have any love or blessings left for my brother. When our parents passed away, they entrusted me with taking care of him, and they said we'd look out for each other when we grew up. But he completely threw that away. It's not just the fact that Melissa cheated that hurts, it's more painful that my own brother betrayed me. Update. Hey guys! I've been thinking about giving you all an update soon. You know how much people on Reddit love updates, but I had to delay it because I have a baby girl now. When I made the original post, my fiancé, now wife, was already 8.5 months pregnant, and we ended up having an early delivery. Our baby girl, Emily, is just the cutest little thing, bringing so much joy to both of us. She's so tiny and adorable, and she's got eyes just like mine. It's unbelievable how we created something so precious. I can't get enough of holding her, and my wife gets a little annoyed sometimes because she thinks I might spoil her too much. Oh, and by the way, my fiancé and I got married pretty quickly in a simple court marriage. We didn't want a big wedding, and we're all doing just fine. Some of you asked how my brother knew my address. Well, he actually didn't. He only knew my email and my work email. He probably figured out which company I work for, and from there, he tracked down my email and sent an invitation. A few days ago, I received another email from my brother. I had forgotten to block him, so it got through. Usually, I don't check my work email much since most things are forwarded in Slack. In the email, my brother poured his heart out. He acknowledged that he knows I won't come to his wedding, but he still wanted me there on his big day. He apologized for what he did and admitted he'd never forgive himself for his actions. He knew he shouldn't have slept with Melissa, but he did it anyway. Growing up, he had always been jealous of me. He envied that I was the more capable brother, always looking after him like a babysitter. When Melissa approached him, he felt like he finally had some importance. Deep down, he knew he was in the wrong, and he wanted to stop. When I told him he was dead to me, it triggered a panic attack in him. He desperately tried to contact me, but my friends wouldn't reveal my location. They stood by my side and refused to be part of his wedding with Melissa, as they also saw me as a big brother figure. Even his own friends judged him harshly for what he had done. His life hit rock bottom when he heard from one of his friends that I had attempted to end my life. 2 years ago, Melissa and my brother made up. At that time, she was a single mom and felt guilty about her past actions because her child's father had cheated on her and left. She wanted to apologize to me, and that's how they rekindled their romance. However, things didn't go well, and my brother eventually called off the wedding and broke up with Melissa again. He still wants me to be there for his big day, even though I've disowned him. He's willing to do whatever it takes to reconcile, even if it takes a lifetime. That's pretty much the gist of it. There was a lot of emotional stuff in the email, but I chose to ignore it and deleted it. My therapist told me that forgiveness should come naturally from the subconscious when we genuinely feel we can forgive someone. It should only be an option if the person shows remorse through their actions, not just their words. Honestly, I don't want to forgive him. I know it may seem petty and cruel, but I'm happy with my life the way it is. Adding him to my life will just bring stress. My wife advised me to let it go and not hold him responsible at all. I fear that if I forgive him, he'll go right back to Melissa. He needs to sort out his own life and be an adult now. I've coddled him enough. It's time for him to take responsibility. People keep asking me about my brother's life, so I want to clear things up. Honestly, I have no clue what he's been up to. I deliberately moved far away from him and even changed jobs to create distance. He must have found out my workplace from where he sent the email. For a whole decade, I acted like he didn't exist, and therapy helped me cope with it. I treated him as if he were already dead. I'm not sure what happened between him and Melissa, but from his email, I can piece together that they dated for a few years and broke up. His friends didn't approve of him being with her, so they canceled the wedding because of Melissa. My brother mentioned he doesn't want to get married unless I'm there to support him, but honestly, it doesn't have to be Melissa. Anyone could fill that role. I don't know why Melissa came back, but she must have thought I would just accept her like a doormat. She should know me better than that. When it comes to holding a grudge, I admit I'm quite stubborn. I had no idea that my actions would have such an impact on my brother's friends. They were genuinely good people who used to hang out with us. Even though they were younger, they treated me like a brother. After I cut off contact with my brother, 2 of his friends, who never had a positive male role model, apologized to me. But I haven't stayed in touch with them. If he truly regretted what he did, he wouldn't have chosen to marry Melissa, the woman who played a big part in ruining my life along with my brother. Did he really think I would forget all the pain and trauma they caused me? Forgiveness doesn't set you free. It just creates another trap. Over the years, I've learned that forgiveness is a tool used by cowards who want to escape the consequences of their wrongdoings. They believe that by receiving forgiveness, the guilt they carry will magically disappear. But true forgiveness can never be forced. It has to be earned, and he hasn't done anything to earn it. Second story. Let me give you some background first. We've been together for a solid 6 years, and our lives are deeply connected. Before meeting my future wife, I only had one other serious girlfriend. We dated for 3 years, got married, and it's been about 2.5 years since we tied the knot. Like any long-term couple, we've had our ups and downs, fights, and romantic moments. Lately, things have been a bit tougher. But life is stressful. Due to financial reasons, we had to move in with her mother, and surprisingly, it's working for all of us. Recently, she's been spending a lot of time with one of our mutual friends. She hangs out with him quite frequently, especially when I'm busy with work. They do regular stuff like watching TV, having drinks, going to the beach, and so on. The visits have become much more frequent in the last few months, happening at least once a week, if not more. Lately, my friend has been avoiding me and not willing to hang out when I'm around. This made me more suspicious with each meeting. Last Friday, after a separate argument with my intoxicated wife, I had a strong urge to check her phone. This was unusual for me since I normally respect her privacy. But my suspicions got the best of me, and I gave in to the temptation. I looked at her text messages with the guy in question. What I discovered crushed me. The messages were explicit and detailed, going back at least 2 months. It made me feel sick to my stomach, and I became dizzy and pale as I read them. The messages referred to his tool in her mouth, with her mentioning how he makes her insatiable. I was in shock. It was hard to comprehend. My thoughts were all over the place. In just a few minutes, I experienced a flood of emotions I had never felt before. Disgust, betrayal, anger, regret, fear, and profound sadness. How could my beloved wife do this to me? I couldn't shake the image of her with that jerk, someone who had been my friend long before I even met her. How could he betray our friendship like that? In that moment, I even thought about resorting to extreme measures. I felt utterly shattered, crying uncontrollably beside my drunken wife. I can't forgive her. I made up my mind then and there that this is unforgivable. I need to leave and be on my own. The problem is, I don't have any money saved up and I don't have my own car. I hardly own anything at all. I decided not to confront her about knowing yet, so I can prepare myself for living alone. With the help of a few supportive friends, I managed to find a new place to move into. I also have another friend who's selling me their car. I'm getting my ducks in a row to drop a bomb on this cheating witch and get away. As it stands now, my plan is to pack and move all my belongings while she's at work tomorrow. I'll have to pick her up from work later in the day. When she gets home and sees all my stuff gone, the final argument will begin. I don't know exactly what I'll say, but I have a lot to express, and the words will come naturally. Edit. The issue I have here is that I'll need to use her car to move my stuff on Friday, so I'm considering a new plan. I'll write a concise but impactful note, more than just, I know, but not too lengthy. Leave it along with the car and keys at her workplace, and then a friend will pick me up so we can leave without a trace. This way, she'll read the note, be devastated, and return home to find all my belongings gone and no sign of me. I'm already preparing to hire a lawyer. I believe I have enough evidence, and I've familiarized myself with divorce laws in Maryland to cover my bases. Fortunately, we don't have significant assets, communal property, or children, which I'm thankful for. Update. As for Friday, it went as well as it could in a situation like this. I took the advice I received from Reddit and changed my plan before the day even began. There was no final argument. Despite learning the devastating news, our last week together went surprisingly well. We went to the beach early in the week and had an incredible closeness on Wednesday night. On Thursday, we had a fancy dinner, she paid for it, and then went to the movies, also her treat. Friday morning she seemed really happy, and we had a great closeness. I dropped her off at work, gave her a sincere hug, and said goodbye. Little did I know it would be our last conversation. Right away, I went to get the keys to my new place and some boxes for packing. I hurried home to start packing my things. My brother-in-law was home at the time, so I pulled him aside and shared the news. He was furious at his sister and completely supportive of me. We had a heartfelt conversation, and he was there for me as I packed. He was an amazing brother, and I made sure to let him know how much I appreciated his support. We cried and talked for a while, and he did everything he could to help me. Sadly, most of my belongings fit into just one carload in a small hatchback. After unloading the first trip, it was almost time for my friend with a truck to finish work. I went back to my old place, and my mother-in-law was there now. We had a long conversation, and she offered her support. While she didn't take sides, she understood my decision and was very encouraging. She assured me that I could count on her for help any time, and that I was still considered family to her. We talked and cried together for a while, although she hoped we could work things out. I explained that I could never forgive her daughter, and she respected my choice. I left my wife's car at the house and asked my mother-in-law to pick her up after work. Throughout the day, my wife was going crazy because I was ignoring her. She tried to reach me multiple times, called and sent countless messages, but I ignored them all. She even started calling my friends and family, worried that something had happened to me. When they spoke to me, I asked them to tell her that they couldn't get a hold of me either. I initially planned to leave a note at home, but I got caught up in emotions while talking to her mother-in-law and completely forgot. I might be seen as weak, but eventually I did send her a message saying, "I'm not going to discuss this right now, and I'll continue to ignore your texts. There's nothing you can say to me at this moment. I hope you're happy with him, and I hope it was worth it. I can never forgive you." Of course, after that, she sent me a few messages, begging and apologizing. She admitted what she did, said she felt like the worst person in the world, and claimed that I am the love of her life and the only one she wants. She even had the nerve to mention, "We broke it off almost 2 weeks ago," as if that's supposed to make me feel better. I haven't responded to anything else she said. Now, let's fast forward to my new place. Unpacking and settling in has been great for my morale. I'm in high spirits, feeling optimistic and alive. I'm moving in with my longest known friend, who's been there for me since I first moved to Maryland over 10 years ago. Spending time with close friends, having good conversations, and enjoying nature is helping me heal. With this second chance at independence, I plan to take a step back, reflect on my life, and work on improving myself and finding happiness within. I want to shed a few pounds, focus on enhancing my musical abilities. I play guitar, bass, drums, and dabble in electronic music. And most importantly, go out and experience the world and the people in it, traveling a bit, meeting new people, and exploring new places are some of my goals. Despite the terrible situation I'm going through, I feel revitalized and full of energy. Update. I haven't shared an update because I don't think it would be as exciting as the divorce story. Life is unpredictable and doesn't always go as planned. But in general, things have been going well. I'm enjoying my independent life, and I even have a new female friend. I'm still waiting for a year of separation to finalize the divorce. Third story. Just to give you some background, we were married for 16 years and together for 20. We have 4 kids, aged 24, 17, 10, and 7. I found out about her affair with a coworker after hacking her phone and seeing their messages. The divorce was finalized in December. In December, I learned she was seeing the affair partner right after moving out through a text meant for him, but sent to me. Overall, our divorce has been very friendly. I got to keep the house, my car, Harley, and business. She only asked for child support, nothing more. We're still good friends, but she lies to me a lot, so I'm cautious about what she tells me. We're doing a great job co-parenting our kids. The issue is that my ex decided to work extra hours today and asked if I could take care of our 7 and 10-year-old boys. I had no problem with that, but as soon as we got in the car, my 7-year-old started bombarding me with questions about mom's new friend. Apparently, the AP and his 12-year-old son stayed over at my ex's place last Friday. The AP apparently slept in bed with my ex. The AP's 12-year-old son had a sleepover with my 7-year-old and told him, "My dad and your mom are boyfriend and girlfriend," which left my son feeling confused. He was also told that the AP's dad might become his new dad. And to top it off, my son asked why this guy was sleeping in bed with his mom. On Saturday, they spent the day shopping at the trampoline park, having lunch, and acting like a family. I was totally blindsided by all of this, and it's clear my ex didn't have a conversation with our son about it. This was the first time my son met these people. I don't think it's fair that I have to clean up my ex's mess, and I find it highly inappropriate for the AP to sleep in her bed. We're not fully divorced yet, and neither is the AP. How should I handle this situation? My son is confused, and I don't think I should have to cover for his mother's bad decisions. Several months later, my ex called me crying and asked if I could take the kids overnight again. I was concerned and asked what was wrong. She replied that karma hit me hard. She explained that something felt off, so she decided to check her affair partner's phone while he was in the shower. To her shock, she found a long string of messages on Facebook with texting, pictures, and explicit conversations, the same way I had discovered her affair. My ex is 39, her affair partner is 52, and his new affair partner is married and just 28. Now don't get me wrong, Part of me wanted to rejoice because it finally happened to her. I had warned her from day one that the guy was a predator. However, after listening to her, I realized she was deeply in love with him, and another part of me felt sorry for her. Interestingly, she apologized to me more that day than she ever did about cheating on me. She said things like, "I am so sorry I put you through this," and "I never realized how much this hurt you." I took her apologies with a grain of salt, because I've moved on and found someone else. We've been happily dating for the last 6 months. The main point of this post is to let everyone know that even in the toughest divorce situations, things can work out, and sometimes karma will step in and bring a small piece of retribution. 2 years later, there was nearly a second cheating incident with the affair partner, but my ex caught him before they could meet up. She has complete control over his phone, monitoring all his apps and constantly checking his messages. Sounds like a living nightmare to me. My ex and the AP are still kind of together, but it's a really strange on-off situation. Let me explain. According to her, they're not together, and both of their Facebook pages say they're single. However, she still occasionally wears his engagement ring, just like how she refused to return my $12,000 wedding ring. Ha! She stays at his apartment now and then, but claims they're just friends. Yeah, right. Who stays over at their ex's place, sleeps in their bed, and calls it just hanging out. It's amusing how she thinks everyone is naive enough to believe that. In the meantime, she had to change jobs because she was really close friends with the plant manager there. They were always talking, going to lunch together, riding Harleys, taking walks on breaks and all that. Rumors started swirling around, and things got messy at work. Her work friend is a married guy with 3 kids, but he still visits her place occasionally and takes her out on Harley rides, to the movies, or whatever they do. Apparently, our teenage son caught them kissing in the driveway, and he didn't know who the guy was. So he called me to ask, and I played dumb, telling him to ask his mother who that was. He got the impression that she and the AP were still together because the guy was over the day before, grilling out and mowing her lawn. Then, there's another new guy on the scene. She won't say how or where she met him, but they went on 2 dates and she didn't seem too interested in him. It turns out they knew each other from a previous job, and he kept talking about how he wanted to be with all her friends and coworkers from back in the day. The other day we were discussing retirement. I told her about my plan to semi-retire in 6 years, once child support ends and all the kids turn 18. My idea is to move to a warmer climate down south. She started with a sob story, saying she had to raise all our children while I built the business, and she'll probably have to work until she dies and will never get to retire. But that's far from the truth. I put in just as much time, housework, and effort into our family as she did. There were even a few years when I did even more than her, while she was out partying with her friends 4 or 5 nights a week. In response to her, I said, "You made your choice to leave me and go with your AP." It was amazing to see the expression on her face. I used to be her retirement plan, but now she only has $14,000 in her 401k, and she's in her early 40s. Even if she stays with her AP or goes back to him, he doesn't have much money saved up for retirement or any significant savings at all. So there's some karma in that. Here's some advice for those of you going through a divorce or about to go through one. My life was completely shattered from October 2018 to December 2019, when our divorce was finalized. But fast forward a few years to now, and I've never been happier. I'm planning to retire early and enjoy some beach time. My relationship with my kids is stronger and better than ever. When things seem dark and terrible, be a good person. Don't lie or deceive. Avoid being malicious, and don't involve the kids in any conflicts between you and your ex-partner. Keep your head up and keep moving forward. The further you walk away from the darkness, the better your life will become. 4th story. I, 40F, have been silently observing on Reddit for a long time, never sharing my story. It's a typical Reddit tale you might come across, but I feel the need to let it out to the world. Thank goodness for Reddit. So let me tell you about my sister, 43F, whom I'll call Ursula. Yes, like the villain. She's always made my life a living hell. Ursula is incredibly manipulative and a narcissist. She acts nice to me when she needs something, but then completely ignores me afterwards. When we were growing up, I thought we were close as sisters. We didn't have the usual fights that make sisters jealous of each other. Now, Looking back as an adult, I believe she actually hated me. She used to give me backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with your glasses," or "You have a boy crush. I thought you were a lesbian. I used to be a tomboy." I always tried to be like her and be everyone's favorite, thinking she was helpful and kind. Or at least, that's what she wanted us to believe. She always made me feel insecure about my looks and the people I dated. When I was 17, I had my first boyfriend, and she made me believe he wasn't right for me, and so on. I ended up breaking up with him, my mistake. Later, I moved out of state for college, studying engineering while she went to business school. Yet, whenever I returned home for holidays, she would still give me those backhanded compliments. At 21, I started dating my ex-husband Jordan. Thankfully, at that time, my sister was focused on someone else, so her attention wasn't on Jordan. He also wasn't her type. We dated for 3 years and got married. For 4 years my life was happy. But during that time, my sister announced she was pregnant. We all assumed it was from her then boyfriend Remy. One day I visited my sister with some food for her pregnancy. She gave me permission to enter her place and handed me a key. As I went inside without knocking, I was surprised to find Jordan's shoes outside. Feeling suspicious, I entered her bedroom, and as you might have guessed, they were without clothes and had closeness. To keep it short, I divorced Jordan. I was in a lot of pain and devastated. My parents supported me, but they seemed to shift their focus more towards my sister and Jordan. Yes, she was pregnant with his child, and it hurt to see them together. Neither of them ever apologized. They just shrugged it off as, "Shit happens." To get away from the situation, I moved away from home 8 years ago when I got a work contract in England. It was a fresh start for me there. I met Peter, a single dad, and we fell in love, got married, and now have a son together. I don't have any contact with my sister. I rarely talk to my dad, but he keeps me updated. Recently, I found out that Jordan and Ursula got married and had 2 more kids. That's pretty much all I knew about them until now. Turns out Jordan cheated on Ursula, and they're going through a nasty fight. To make things worse, 2 of their kids aren't even Jordan's, so Ursula hasn't been faithful at all. My dad said it's a complete mess, and they'll probably end up getting divorced, but she's pushing for alimony. I hung up the phone and poured myself a drink. Honestly, I'm glad I'm thousands of miles away from all that drama. My mom called me too, saying she needs me, but I'm not sure if I want to go or not. As much as I might enjoy seeing Ursula's life falling apart, I'm not sure if I want to get involved in all that drama. Edit. Since people seem curious and want all the details, I thought I'd add more information. My sister cheated on Remy, who was a really nice guy. He was devastated when he found out that my sister's child wasn't his, but actually Jordan's. Afterward, Remy moved on and found a wonderful wife. I still follow him on Instagram. My parents were angry at Ursula, but she's a manipulative person and convinced everyone that Jordan forced her into having closeness with him, threatening to divorce me if she didn't comply. She made it seem like she was saving my marriage by sleeping with my husband. How typical. I got married in London, but my relatives couldn't come due to the long distance. However, my father was able to attend. Unfortunately, my mother couldn't come because she was recovering from back surgery at that time. Some people wrongly believe that my parents were bad, but that's not true. They were just regular human beings. I understand they were in a tough situation having to choose between 2 kids. Besides, they were becoming grandparents and couldn't abandon my sister. Even though she's difficult, they didn't let her get away with everything. They supported me during my divorce and paid for my therapy after it. They couldn't completely cut off Ursula because she was pregnant. My dad and mom have a strained relationship with her and Jordan, but they haven't disowned them because of their kids. My dad even refused to walk Ursula down the aisle at her wedding, which I didn't attend. However, I kept in touch with my parents after I moved to England, and they were supportive of me. My mom couldn't come to my wedding due to her back surgery, as she's in her 60s and has various health issues. My dad attended the wedding. Later, my mom managed to visit me after my honeymoon, but she was devastated that she couldn't meet my son due to flight difficulties. I'm now going back to my hometown for some business, and I would have gone regardless of the phone call. It's been 4 years since I last saw my mom and dad, and I miss them. Despite my feelings towards my sister, I don't hate my parents. I may have given the wrong impression of my parents. They are not bad people, and they do love both of their kids. I don't believe they sidelined me. My dad and Ursula's relationship is still strained, but he's only involved because of the grandkids. My mom is the same way. I never asked them to cut off Ursula because she needed them, but I kept my distance from her. They still don't like Jordan and Ursula. My dad even refused to walk her down the aisle when she married Jordan. I distanced myself for my own reasons. I got a job in the UK and traveled around Europe, something I always wanted to do. Now, I'm settled in my life with my 4-year-old son, husband, and stepdaughter. My mom and dad still keep in touch with me. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to meet my mom in 3 years because of COVID and other issues. Now I might have to visit my hometown because of a project, and I also miss them. I don't blame my mom for not attending my wedding. She had a surgery, and it was difficult for her to move. She was present on video chat during the whole ceremony. It's been 4 years since we've seen each other, and I believe she misses me a lot. I miss her too. Update. So I arrived in my home country with my husband and son. My mom and dad picked us up from the airport, and it was wonderful to see them after so many years. They looked tired and pale, as if they haven't eaten or slept well for a long time. My mom was especially happy to meet my husband and son since she hadn't met them before. I asked them not to tell my sister that I'm here, as I'll only be staying for a few weeks before leaving. Right now, I'm staying with my aunt. As for my sister, my mom told me she's living with her and her kids. I learned some things about my sister. She was having an affair with her former married boss, and it turns out the 2 kids she has are actually his. The boss's wife found out and confronted my sister, resulting in a physical altercation. Interestingly, the company where the boss works is owned by his father-in-law. Yeah, her boss is going to lose his job because of the affair. My sister had already switched jobs before all this drama unfolded, but she continued the affair. Now, because of the whole situation, she's at risk of losing her new job too, as the company's owner is friends with the boss's wife. It's like she's gotten herself into a difficult situation she can't escape from. Jordan has also quit his job because he refuses to pay my sister alimony and child support for the kids that aren't his. He's planning to sue the boss for child support for those kids. They are constantly fighting, and my mom says it's taking a toll on Jordan's mental state. On top of that, he was also having an affair with his coworker. My mom wants to kick my sister out, but she can't because of her kids. She may hate my sister, but she doesn't want to punish the innocent kids. I can't help but feel sorry for those children too. They don't deserve to be caught in the middle of such a messy situation with their parents. I want to make it clear that my parents are not bad people. They have been very supportive of me. The only reason they continue to have contact with my sister Ursula is because of her kids. I feel sorry for my mom because she doesn't have much time left, and with her illness, she may not have the strength to handle all this drama. I know my sister will somehow find out that I am here, but I am ready for that. I don't want to see her because I know she'll pull me into her mess, but I plan to enjoy the few weeks I have with my husband and child. Hello everyone. I'm currently in a difficult situation and I'm unsure if I'm making the right decisions. By the way, this is my first post here, so please forgive me if I miss any details. Feel free to ask for more information. Let me share my current situation. I'm a 25-year-old male and I've been in a relationship with my wife, who is 27 years old, for 8.5 years. Last August, during our trip to the USA, I proposed to her. We legally got married 10 weeks ago, had a church ceremony 5 weeks ago, and went on our honeymoon 2 weeks after that. During our honeymoon, I noticed something unusual for the first time. She was constantly texting on her phone and tried to hide it or turn off the display whenever I glanced at it to see who she was talking to. When I asked, she claimed she was texting her friends or her sister. This made me suspicious, and in the beginning of the second week, I decided to check her phone while she was asleep. It was the first time I had ever felt the need to do this because I had always trusted her. To my shock, I discovered that the woman I believed loved me, the one I had married just a month prior, was cheating on me with someone else, a 39-year-old man. He works as a cook where she is employed, so they see each other daily during the week. We still had to stay together for the rest of the week and our flight home during our honeymoon, so I didn't confront her about it at that time because I didn't want to have a fight while on our honeymoon. I have no idea how I managed to hold it in. After further investigation when we returned home, I found out that their relationship had begun at the end of November last year, which was after our engagement but well before our wedding. I don't understand why she didn't mention this to me earlier when we had plenty of time to cancel our wedding. Somehow, I didn't catch on until it was too late. I haven't talked to my wife about this yet, so she doesn't know that I'm aware of her affair. However, I think she might suspect that I'm suspicious of something. We still have tasks left, like selecting our wedding photos for the album and writing thank you letters for the gifts we received, which is why I haven't brought up this issue until now. But I'm feeling really tormented inside, and I need to address this situation. I'm currently looking into whether I can legally remove her from our house. We rented it together and both our names are on the contract, and whether our wedding can be annulled or if I need to go through a divorce process. Here's an important detail. The other guy is separated from his wife and has 2 teenage children. He's not getting a divorce right now because they have some outstanding loans to repay. Additionally, they frequently express their love for each other and a desire to be together fully, but they can't do so at the moment. From what I know, their plan involves my wife having children with me, since the other guy already has some, and then, when he's ready, either divorced or otherwise, they will pursue a relationship together. My dilemma is that I feel guilty for contemplating divorce less than 2 months after our wedding, especially after the big celebration and all the gifts we received. However, I can't continue living like this. I'm not sure what I'm expecting from you all, maybe just confirmation that I'm making the right choice by leaving her and seeking a divorce. Thank you for any advice or insights you can provide. Best regards. Update. I'm planning to speak with our office lawyer today to see if they have any information on this matter. If they don't, I'll contact a specific lawyer to get some advice on how to proceed. Regarding our financial situation, neither of us is wealthy. We're both doing okay. If she worked full-time like I do, she currently works 75% due to her employer's restrictions, she would actually earn more than me. My parents, on the other hand, are reasonably well off, but not excessively so. I guess you could say they're upper middle class. However, everything I owned before our marriage remains mine, and everything she owned before our marriage remains hers. Anything acquired or purchased after our marriage will be divided. She also won't inherit anything from my parents because it's my right to receive it, and this was the case before we got married. Update 1. I've discussed the matter with the lawyer in our office who doesn't have much knowledge about it. They provided me with contact information for someone who should be able to assist me. I'm planning to call them today or tomorrow and arrange a meeting as soon as possible. I'll keep you all updated on how things progress. Thanks to everyone for your support in the meantime. Update 2. I've spoken with the lawyer and she needs to research whether having another relationship is sufficient grounds for annulling the marriage. In all her years of handling divorces, it's the first time someone has contacted her so soon after getting married, and she expressed her sympathy for my situation. However, she's looking into it and will inform me of the available options in a few days. I'll keep you posted once she gets back to me. Update 3. I have up to 6 months from the marriage to initiate an annulment, so I have some time to talk to the priest and explore the possibility of annulling the wedding in the church. I plan to focus on my upcoming school exams over the next 2 weeks, and then discuss this matter with my wife calmly. The challenge is figuring out how to start this conversation with her without making it sound harsh, like, "Hey, I know you're cheating on me." Update 4. I've had a discussion with our priest, and it turns out he can also initiate an annulment process. However, he suggested that I first talk to my wife about it, without immediately jumping to divorce. He wants her to decide whether she wants to stay with me or not. I'm unsure about giving her that choice because I'm not sure I can ever trust her again. The tricky part is figuring out how to begin this conversation with her. I know there's no perfect moment, but perhaps you can provide some advice. What should I say? What should I avoid saying? The priest advised me not to focus on her faults, but instead express how my feelings are hurt and how our marriage feels strained. I shouldn't bring up forgiveness, but should offer my help. I should provide enough information so she understands that I'm aware of her cheating, but I shouldn't reveal too much. It's probably better to consult my lawyer first to understand the next steps and discuss the house we're renting together. The contract has both our names, and only then have the conversation with my wife. Hello everyone. A lot has transpired since my last post. Previously, I inquired about whether I should address the issue or proceed with divorce or annulment. I provided updates regarding my conversations with a lawyer, who informed me that I could request an annulment within 6 months of marriage. However, since cheating isn't explicitly mentioned in the law as grounds for annulment, she couldn't guarantee a 100% success rate for annulment. So, in the worst-case scenario, I'll proceed with a divorce. I also consulted our priest, and from the church's perspective, I can request an annulment at any time, provided I can prove that the cheating occurred before, during, and after the marriage. Fortunately, I have all the necessary evidence to establish this. When I confided in my friends, they unanimously recommended that I ask her to leave my home immediately. Consequently, after gathering all the requisite information, I confronted my wife about this matter 3 weeks ago. Our conversation was filled with tears, some raised voices, although I managed to remain composed, and we discussed a multitude of issues in the subsequent days. We even spent a weekend away together to address everything privately. In summary, she doesn't have a clear reason for why she cheated on me. It just happened. She didn't bring it up earlier because she feared my reaction, thinking I might get angry, leave her alone, and go away, which raises the question of what she expected to happen when I found out after we got married. She assured me that she still loves me. So I asked her to figure out what she truly wants and what she's willing to do to salvage our marriage. Depending on her decision, I would then determine whether I wanted to give it another shot with her or not, although I was already about 90% inclined to leave her. After a week, I still hadn't received a clear answer from her about whether she wanted me or the other guy, so I made the decision for both of us. If she couldn't decide between her husband and her lover within less than 3 months of marriage, then I could certainly decide whether I wanted to spend my life with her or not. 2 weeks ago, we mutually agreed to end our relationship. The unfortunate part is that during this whole time, she didn't ask me once to stay. She was sad about me leaving, but I think she was also happy about the prospect of pursuing a relationship with the other guy. Last week, I disclosed the entire situation to my parents and brothers. They were all saddened by the news but understood the situation and agreed that it's the best decision for me. On the same day, my wife also informed her parents and they asked her to leave their home. She had to stay with some friends temporarily, but has since rented an apartment and is in the process of moving her belongings out of my house. In 10 days, I'll be meeting with the lawyer to initiate the process for an annulment of our marriage. I also need to give the priest an update that my wife has moved out of my house and then request the annulment through the church. At this point, I'm at a loss for words. My marriage didn't even last 3 months, and it seems my wife was almost relieved to part ways. So I feel there's nothing more to be said. I realize that I still need some time to heal from all of this, but things are slowly improving. I'm getting accustomed to being on my own and handling all the household responsibilities. I appreciate your support. Now, I have to start over with my life, and I hope to find someone who truly loves me one day. Story 2. I'm a 22-year-old guy, and I have suspicions about something going on between my girlfriend, Alexis, 22, female, and my friend, Derek, 21, male. We all live together, and sometimes I wonder if I'm just imagining things. The 4 of us attended the same university, and our apartment, which Alexis and our mutual friend Brooke, 22, female, originally leased, is large and expensive. Initially, there were supposed to be 3 girls living here, but the 3rd person backed out suddenly. Although they planned to move to a cheaper place, they had invested a lot in this apartment and didn't want to leave. When my lease ended 6 months ago, I suggested moving in to split the rent and utilities 3 ways, as I was already staying over frequently. Both girls were thrilled with the idea. Shortly before I moved in, Brooke started dating my best friend Derek, which seemed great because it meant both couples could hang out with their significant others and best friends all together. Derek began staying over more often, and when his parents recently sold their house and left town, he temporarily moved in with us. We haven't pressured him to find a new place because sharing expenses among 4 people is financially beneficial for all of us. However, it's important to note that only Alexis and Brooke are on the lease. Surprisingly, the apartment owner doesn't mind our living situation as long as the rent is paid because we're quiet. However, there have been 3 incidents that have raised suspicions for me. I want to clarify that I wouldn't make an accusation like this if it weren't for these incidents. Alexis is a sweet and shy girl, and Derek has been like a brother to me. They don't appear flirtatious, but as I mentioned earlier, all 4 of us are very close friends and spend a lot of time together. Brooke and I have early classes, so we leave by 8 a.m. Derek and Alexis have afternoon classes, so it's not unusual for them to leave together, although they usually take separate cars. One day, I decided to wait for Alexis outside her class to surprise her with lunch. I watched everyone coming out of the class, but Alexis wasn't among them. I texted her to ask where she was, and she replied, "Just go to the class. Going home to study." I called her, but there was no response, which struck me as odd because she had just texted me a moment ago. She didn't answer until much later, which is unusual for her as she's often on her phone. Later that day, I bumped into Brooke, and she casually mentioned that Derek had stayed home sick, and she was planning to bring him some soup. At the time, I didn't think much of it. However, when I got home later that night, I noticed that Alexis's car was in the exact same spot it had been all day. She typically parks in guest parking since our unit only has 3 spaces, so her car usually moves around. I asked her if she had gone to class, and she hesitated before admitting that she skipped because she found the professor's explanations frustrating. She knows I dislike it when she skips classes because it has affected her grades before. However, she had been doing better recently. While I was doing the dishes, I kissed her and told her I trusted her judgment. She explained that she probably wouldn't skip again because being alone in the house when bored was unpleasant. We laughed, and the night went on as usual. We went to bed, and as I lay there, almost drifting off, something struck me. She shouldn't have been alone because Derek was supposedly homesick, right? She was still awake on her phone. I suddenly woke up and asked her where Derek was today, considering Brooke had mentioned he was homesick. She seemed surprised by the question, possibly because I went from half asleep to wide awake with a random inquiry. She said he had been here a bit in the morning, but went out to run errands or something. She wasn't sure. After the other incidents, I couldn't help but feel that her scattered response to this question seemed off, although it might just be my imagination. The second incident occurred when I went to throw some things in the kitchen garbage and noticed a rubber wrapper of the exact same brand that Alexis and I use. It wasn't very visible, tucked behind a cereal box, but its distinctive color caught my eye. It was torn. Derek always uses a different brand. It was unusual because we typically keep the wrappers in our own room's garbage cans, so they don't end up in the kitchen. Additionally, due to exams and stress, Alexis and I hadn't been intimate in a few days. I didn't go searching for a used protection or anything. I just returned to the room to check if some of our supplies were missing. It was hard to tell because we buy in bulk. My initial thought was that Brooke and Derek might have run out and taken from our stock without asking, which upset me. Later that night, I brought up the rubber wrapper to Alexis, and she seemed surprised. When I mentioned my theory, she became unusually agitated. She's usually very calm but went on a rant about their invasion of our privacy. I suggested talking to them about it, but she immediately shot down the idea and made me promise not to bring it up unless they did it again. It struck me as strange because we're generally open about sexual topics, but living together might have made Alexis uncomfortable discussing it. She comes from a conservative small town and isn't as open about these things as we are. Derek and I get along with the guys in the neighboring apartment who are also graduates of our university. We don't hang out, but we have a friendly relationship where we exchange small talk about sports or chat in the hallway. It's comfortable enough that we can ask each other to keep it down without it being awkward. This brings us to the third incident that occurred last Monday. I was alone at the apartment when I bumped into one of the guys from next door. We chatted about football, and then he mentioned that one of the couples in our apartment complex was really into morning intimacy and the walls were too thin for their liking. I chuckled because Alexis and I occasionally had morning activities on weekends when we had the place to ourselves. Brooke and Derek typically spent weekends at her parents' house, which was about an hour and a half away. But as the day went on, I realized we hadn't engaged in morning activities for about a month. On weekends, it had shifted more towards the evening or not at all. Did he mean on weekdays? It made me uneasy. I considered asking for more details, but the conversation ended and I felt like I missed my chance. Plus, it's an awkward question, and I might just be overly suspicious. So here's my dilemma. Am I overthinking things? Am I seeing signs that aren't there? Or is something actually going on? And if something is amiss, how should I proceed? I'm hesitant to ask her directly at this point because, for one, I don't want to seem jealous or paranoid if nothing happened. And two, if there is something going on, I don't want them to become more discreet about it. One idea I had was dropping by one of these mornings when they're alone together, but I'm unsure of the right timing. If I show up too early or too late, they might become more cautious. Update. Most of you recommended that I talk to Brooke and consider walking in on the situation. I decided to do both. Sunday night, everyone was back in the apartment. I had planned to talk to Brooke privately about our neighbor's comment, but before I could, she said something that completely contradicted my theory. She told Derek to go to bed early for work the next morning. What? I knew Derek had a job on campus, but he had always worked night shifts casually. I asked when he started working mornings, and he said he picked up the extra shifts a month ago. Starting at 9 a.m., I leave for my day at 7:45 a.m., so it's possible I hadn't noticed. I spent the night trying to figure out if he was lying, if there were still mornings he was at home, or if Alexis might be seeing someone else in the mornings, as some of you suggested. Or maybe I was just being paranoid. I went to bed feeling drained and confused. The next morning, I left for my classes as usual, alternating between wanting to rush home to check on Alexis and thinking I had too much work to chase a theory I wasn't sure about anymore. Eventually, I headed home after my first class. In a strange way, I almost wish I hadn't. When I arrived at the apartment, Derek's car was absent. Only Alexis's car was there. My heart raced as I walked to the apartment. I didn't know what to expect outside the apartment door. Immediately, I heard a guy's voice from inside, chatting, laughing, and a soft feminine voice responding with giggles. I've seen various reactions to this situation on this subreddit, but I had never thought about what I'd do in such a situation. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to catch their conversation, but I could only make out a word here and there amidst the giggles. Then I heard Alexis being tickled and shrieking. Maybe I should have waited longer. Looking back, I wish I had. However, as soon as I started fiddling with my keys, it went eerily silent inside. She was with Mark. I hadn't mentioned Mark in my previous post, but he's one of the guys in the apartment next to ours, not the one who initially tipped me off. I never liked Mark, his know-it-all attitude and his inappropriate comments towards both girls. But I had never suspected this. As soon as I opened the door, both of them looked at me with guilty expressions, dispelling any naive doubts I might have had about the situation being innocent. I had intended to confront them or demand answers, but my eyes welled up with tears, and I didn't want them to see me like that. So I simply said, "Nice, real nice," and hurried back to my car. I could hear Alexis yelling my name in the hallway, but I didn't stop. I half expected her to chase after me, but when I reached my car, no one was following. I drove to a nearby park and sat there in disbelief. Strangely, my first thought was, how is my family going to react to this? What on earth am I going to tell them? My family absolutely adores Alexis. They often joked about our wedding and considered her a part of the family. Then I started thinking about our living arrangements, our final exams, and the fact that in about 2 weeks I can't handle moving right now. I'm in the midst of applying to an extremely competitive graduate program, and I can't allow anything to jeopardize that, especially not this. Fortunately, a friend has offered me a place to stay. I'll have to return home at some point to get my clothes, and I'm planning to do that during a lab period. Alexis took about an hour before she started blowing up my phone, but once she did, the messages didn't stop. She initially asked me to come home so she could explain, even before I had a chance to respond. Then she sent another message begging me to return because she was having an anxiety attack, something I'd always helped her through. Maybe I'm heartless, but all I could think was, good. You earned it. There was a pause, and then she said, I don't understand why you're so jealous. We were just hanging out. I waited, and she continued, I know it may look sketchy, but trust me, if I were in your shoes, I'd think the same thing. But we weren't doing anything. He needed advice on girl problems. You have to believe me. Honestly, I don't believe her. Normally, I'd feel a strange sense of satisfaction watching a cheater struggle to cover their tracks. But my mind kept replaying all the wonderful times we had together and wondering if she was cheating back then too. I'm torn between wanting to know when this started and being worried about it. This has been going on for more than just a month, and I have my suspicions. Later that night, I received a text from an unknown number. It turned out to be the friendly guy from next door. He mentioned that he got my number from Derek and expressed his profound apologies for what I'm going through. He admitted he should have told me sooner but wasn't entirely certain. He knew his friend was involved with a girl who had a boyfriend but didn't connect the dots until he learned her name. As many of you suspected, his earlier comment was an attempt to clue me in. So, I guess he's the bro of the year. I don't think Derek and Brooke are aware of this yet. I haven't messaged them. I haven't found the right words. I know this is going to turn our living situation and friendships upside down. I suppose I should message them before Alexis spins a different narrative. So, it turns out it wasn't Derek. It was one of our neighbors. A fact we didn't know until now. Given this mess, the only silver lining is that it seems like Obi-Wan has nothing to do with Alexis, and their relationship is over as it should be. But we can't be completely sure of that yet. Let's move on to the next update to see what unfolds. A quick clarification on the last update. When I walked in, they weren't literally in the act. They were just sitting on the couch with a deer-in-the-headlights look that was highly incriminating. They both fell silent, and it was clear this wasn't a, hey, guess who dropped by kind of situation. Anyways, on to the latest update. I've been incredibly busy with the semester wrapping up, and I heeded the advice to bury myself in my work. I've spent a lot of time at the library because Alexis doesn't go there. While posting the last update, I realized how foolish it was that I hadn't reached out to Derek and Brooke to share my side of the story. I took a screenshot of the text from the friendly neighbor, Will. Just a side note, all names have been changed except Mark's because within a minute Derek bombarded my phone with calls and texts, making it clear he had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, Alexis was sending texts, practically begging me to meet up with her. I felt awful and replied to Derek with a single text, saying I wasn't in the mood for talking. Then, I put my phone away for the night. The next morning, I received a text from Derek inviting me to my favorite restaurant for dinner and drinks, assuring me that no one else would be there, not even Brooke. I haven't had much of an appetite since all of this happened, but the offer meant a lot, and I genuinely wanted to see him. So I decided to go after my classes. I arrived at the restaurant first, my heart in my throat, worrying that Alexis might somehow be there. Thankfully, she wasn't. When Derek showed up, he gave me a big hug and immediately asked, "Dude, what the heck?" Now, things get a bit crazy and dramatic. Many of you suggested that Brooke might side with Alexis or had been covering for her the entire time. I wasn't so sure because even though she's closer to Alexis, she and I have been friends for a bit longer. According to Derek, as soon as he told Brooke, she was absolutely furious. In his words, "I sort of wanted to give Alexis a piece of my mind, but Brooke handled that and then some." You might remember I mentioned that Alexis came from a conservative small town. Her parents had no clue we were living together, and she always stressed that they shouldn't find out, as they might cut off her financial support. Her parents liked me enough to be polite, but they were constantly concerned that our relationship might distract her from school or lead to an unplanned pregnancy. Derek explained that Brooke demanded Alexis pack her things and find a new place, or else she'd spill the beans to her parents. Derek mentioned that later that night, he heard Alexis crying in the living room while hanging a sweater I had left behind. She was wailing about her life being over when Brooke emerged from her bedroom and said, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have left Mark then." It's kind of funny to imagine that moment. Brooke has always been a no-nonsense girl with a hot temper. But I certainly didn't expect her to react this way. It was incredibly touching that she took cheating so seriously during that dinner. All my worries about losing my friends were completely washed away, and I managed to eat a few pieces of sushi. When we left dinner, Derek offered to let me know when Alexis was gone so I could move back in. I declined his offer for a few reasons. Firstly, even if she does move out, everything in that apartment reminds me of her, from Derek and Brooke to Alexis and Mark, and I don't really want to sleep in it. Secondly, in my current emotional state, I don't want to feel like a third wheel with a happy couple, even though I'm sure they'd be understanding. He understood my points but told me to inform him if I changed my mind. It seems like Brooke and Alexis's friendship is pretty much over. This week has been quite uneventful, but I've had to avoid Alexis. Fortunately, I'm in an undergraduate program with only 60 students. I asked 2 friends to keep an eye out for her after sharing the story and started showing up to class at the last minute. To my knowledge, she only waited outside one of my classes. I received a text saying she had been spotted in front of that classroom, and it mentioned, "Waterworks are in progress. Proceed with caution." I ended up skipping that class because I wasn't sure if she would leave, and I really didn't want to risk an uncomfortable encounter. Later that night, she sent me a lengthy Facebook message explaining everything from the beginning, and it made me feel sick reading it. I thought about not reading it, but once I opened it, I couldn't stop. She mentioned that he had been flirty with her in the halls and she tried to be friendly in return, but it might have seemed like flirting because he kissed her mid-sentence. At one point, she expressed guilt for inadvertently leading him on, which made it difficult for her to reject his advances. She mentioned that it had happened only 3 times, and she hated it. She stated she was going to end it. During the conversation I walked in on, she expressed understanding if I needed time and space, and she said she would do anything to make it right. She offered to treat me like a king, assuring me I'd never have to cook, clean, or do my laundry again. She wanted full access to her phone and passwords, even suggesting we install Life 360, an app to track her location through her phone. She wanted me to cut off all contact with Mark and her male friends, just to be safe, I suppose. She offered makeup sex whenever I wanted. Does that sound like a healthy relationship to you? I didn't respond. Part of me wanted to keep her on Facebook and watch the drama unfold. She was posting dramatic statuses and song lyrics about mistakes, forgiveness, and some related to our song. But I know myself too well. I don't want to compulsively check her page and sift through old photos, so I blocked her. A few hours later, Derek texted me, saying she was crying and screaming because I blocked her. In happier news, the family I'm staying with is fantastic. I felt a bit guilty about taking up their space and using their electricity, so I offered to pay rent and contribute to some bills. Even though I'm unemployed, my family provides me with a decent allowance for rent and food. However, they declined the offer and said the first month is free. If I need more time here, we'll discuss it, they said with a wink. A friend told me they've hosted his and his sister's troubled friends before, so it's not a big deal to them. I'm incredibly grateful. Regarding the helpful neighbor, I called him to express my gratitude. He mentioned that Mark has been unusually quiet these past few days and informed another guy that he had been dumped. Whatever. I don't want to think about it. I sent Brooke a message thanking her for kicking Alexis out, and she said she'd do it regardless of whether or not I move back in. She's going to give me a heads up on when Alexis is gone so I can get the rest of my things. In the meantime, I'm spending a lot of time studying, applying to grad school, and hanging out with the guy I'm living with. I'm going to wait until after finals to tell my parents about the situation, because my mom asks a million questions about everything, and I'm not in the mood to answer them. Once finals were over, everything hit me like a ton of bricks. I went through my social media and removed all the pictures with her, threw out items that reminded me of her, and even removed our songs from my playlist. We'd been inseparable since we met, so this was over 2 years of memories. To put it shortly, it was really tough, but I had this urge to get it all done quickly. Then, a particular Redditor messaged me, expressing concern that Alexis might be struggling with dangerous thoughts now that she's lost everything. Her closest friends, her boyfriend, and her apartment. I know it might sound dramatic, but that message stuck in my mind. What Alexis did was absolutely terrible, but I thought a final conversation might give me better closure and maybe help her understand that it's truly over and encourage her to move on. So I messaged Alexis, saying that if she wanted to talk, we could meet up somewhere, but there was no way we could be together after what happened, so please don't ask. Surprisingly, she responded almost immediately, asking when and where. We agreed to meet at an off-campus coffee place. When I got there, she was already at the table and tried to hug me, but I waved her away. I felt terrible, but I wanted to get this conversation over with. She asked how I'd been and how finals went, but I interrupted and asked her if she had been unhappy in our relationship. Her eyes widened, and she repeatedly said, No, before falling silent. So I asked her why she did what she did if she wasn't unhappy. She started by retelling the story about having trouble saying no and how he was very pushy. I interrupted her and asked her to stop with the excuses and take responsibility, at least for what happened after he kissed her mid-sentence. But having sex 3 times? No way. She looked down, shrugged, and admitted, You're right, I know. She began tearing up, apologizing and saying how sorry she was. Then she asked if there was any chance we could get back together, which I somewhat expected even though I told her not to. I just shook my head. I suggested she could continue living with Derek and Brooke if she wanted to, but she declined and said she already had plans to move in with another girlfriend. From there, the conversation became circular, with them trying to explain her actions as difficulties in turning down guys due to her fear of being seen as unfriendly, and me trying to get her to admit that excuse was nonsense. I don't know why, but I really needed her to stop using that crutch and admit that she had ruined a perfectly good relationship all on her own, but she just wouldn't. She was always stubborn. Eventually, I let it go, and we parted ways somewhat amicably. As I was leaving, she grabbed my hand as if to say something, but ended up shaking her head and letting go. Initially, the conversation made me feel worse than before, but ultimately, it made me realize that she was never the kind of person I wanted to be with, even without the cheating. She never took responsibility for anything, failing classes, not finding a job or internship, and more. It was always someone else's fault. I just hadn't thought about it too deeply. After the coffee meeting, I met up with Derek and we went to the apartment. Brooke was there, but she mostly stayed in her room. We had some beers, played video games, and talked about everything that had happened. Derek admitted they hadn't been able to find a third roommate. Aside from complete strangers, they didn't want to move in, and they asked me again to stay with them. I could tell that Derek really wanted me to, and I felt guilty about them being stuck with the lease, so I accepted. I told them I'd wait until Alexis took all her furniture and belongings from before I even moved in, as I still didn't want to sleep in that bed. Life isn't perfect now, but I'm doing better. Alexis moved her things out. I bought a second-hand bed and dresser from another student. I had my first round of classes last week, and although I might sound like a total nerd, they're really cool and hands-on, and the professors are incredibly nice. Derek and Brooke have been really supportive and don't make me feel like a third wheel at all. I saw Mark in the hallway once, and he completely ignored me, and I ignored him. But the urge to punch him in the face was very real. I guess that's something that will go